Look out, Angie. That's it. Good dog.
Are you ready? Welcome to the Folk School on Willow Creek, featuring University Distinguished Professor Tom Easern, singing and telling stories from the Salon on Willow Creek.
As I was walking one morning for pleasure, I spied a cowpuncher riding along. His hat was thrown back, spurs were jingling. As he approached, he was singing this song. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, it's your misfortune and none of my own. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, you know that Wyoming's gonna be your new home. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, you know it's your misfortune and none of my own. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, you know that Wyoming will be your new home. Yeah, some fellas go up the long trail for pleasure, and that's where they get it most awfully wrong. Got no idea the trouble they cause us as we go driving them doggies along. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, it's your misfortune and none of my own. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, you know that Wyoming will be your new home. Now your mama was raised way down in Texas, where the jimson weed and the sandburs grow. We'll fill you up on prickly pear and cholla and throw you on the trail to Idaho. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggy, it's your misfortune, none of my own. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggy, you know that Wyoming's gonna be your new home. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggy, it's your misfortune and none of my own. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, you know that Wyoming's gonna be your new home. Now you're gonna be soup for Uncle Sam's engines, it's beef if beef, I hear him cry. Get along, little doggies, you're gonna be beef steered in the big by and by. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, it's your misfortune and none of my own. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, you know that Wyoming's gonna be your new home. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, it's your misfortune and none of my own. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, you know that Wyoming will be your new home. Now I ain't got no father, I ain't got no mother. My parents, they all left me when I first did wrong. I ain't got no sister and I ain't got no brother. I'm a poor lonesome cowboy and a long way from home. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, it's your misfortune and none of my own. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, you know that Wyoming's gonna be your new home. And once more, Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, you know that Wyoming's gonna be your new home. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggies, you know that Wyoming's gonna be your new home. Boy, I started out a little bit behind and never did catch up with myself there, Dr. K. Well, this place is, it looks like one of the ballads we're going to be singing later on tonight. The place is, dough is scattered all over the room and it's looking like a fright. In case you didn't pick it up, there was a bit of scrambling going on just before we started here, which is probably why I'm starting out a little bit behind and thoughts uncollected. We've got quite a number of people coming over tomorrow for a post-commencement reception. It's we're kind of declaring a truce with COVID here for the moment, or whatever you want to call it, and inviting families of graduates over to the house. And there'll be quite a crowd of them over here. This place looks like a darn church basement the morning before the fall supper here. I've got 2 crock pots going on the counter here and a big roaster full of beans, and Dr. K just put 3 pies in the oven, which are what variety again?
Juneberry gooseberry.
Juneberry gooseberry, goonberry pie. Goonberry pie.
Juneberry.
And you're still promising the cobbler to go along with them?
And an apricot cobbler tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah.
How many people?
How many? I think 33 last count I had. Huh? 2 dogs. And so we will try to keep the doggies rounded up and on the trail there. That song I just started out with. Okay, there are a couple themes going on here tonight. This isn't just entirely random, although a good bit of it is every time, as you know. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, Get Along Little Dogies, a rather well-known cowboy ballad. And it has kind of auspicious origins in terms of establishing text, because just about the earliest text that I've got of it is one that was jotted down by Owen Wister in the 1890s while he's on a trip to Texas. But the song travels all over the Great Plains. It's one that doesn't seem to take to the newspapers very much, by which I suspect that means it didn't cross over from the cowboy tradition into the homesteading community very much. But there are enough text to establish it as a bona fide folk song of the Great Plains. And then now I was singing a version that comes from sort of a latter-day songcatcher named Myra Hull, who grew up down there not far from Wichita, Kansas. And she, in effect, collected the songs that her uncles and mother and other family members sang there in Sedgwick County, Kansas. And then she got off to University of Kansas, and I believe got a master's degree, and then stayed around and taught composition and literature there for many years. The only kind of research she did as a college teacher was the folk song tradition of her own family. And it's quite valuable. Now that text there, think about it. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggy, that's your misfortune and none of my own. That little 7th chord throwing in there, and that 7th in the tune, that's just not in any other version of it. So there's something going on in her family. And in particular, it's got the usual chorus. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, and so on. Go to Wyoming, go be or no home. And then it drops down way into the lower register. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggy, it's your misfortune, none of my own. Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, get along, little doggy, you know that Wyoming wanna be your new home. And I just suspect that Myra had an uncle or somebody like that who had kind of a deep voice, and he took advantage of it. Now, what we got going on here is it appears within Myra Hull's family, the family of this songcatcher in Kansas. They kind of took ownership of the song and took it in their own direction. Can you do that? Well, Owen Wister didn't own that song. He didn't claim to write it. He just wrote it down. Nobody that, as far as I can tell, claims to be the author of Whoopie-Ti-Yi-o, Get Along Little Dogies. It seems to have antecedents in a couple of the English child ballads, documented ballads, but the connections are kind of tenuous. When I examine them, there's some relationship there, but it's not really quite direct. This is one where cowboys took it in hand, and then Myra's family clearly took it in hand, because there are no versions that have the melodic variations that her version has. And then maybe that's our theme for tonight. Whose song is this? Her family figured it was their song and they were going to do what they wanted to. Yeah, there wasn't any brand on this critter. They mavericked it and made it their own. Not an uncommon thing in the history of Great Plains folk song. You got anything to say from NDSU Press this week, Dr. Kelly?
I do.
Anything, kind of interesting happening?
Well, I was just telling Alan Brose, who's coming in from Washington, D.C.
Good to see you again, Alan.
That I have two friends in D.C. right now who have been advocating for and providing testimony for the American Indian Boarding School Act. Those hearings were yesterday.
Yeah.
And so Denise Lajimodier, author of the Stringing Rosaries book, and one of her interviewees, Ramona Klein, flew to D.C. and that's what they're up to today. Denise was very excited. She got to meet Deb Haaland, Secretary of Interior, face to face and hand her a copy of her own book.
There's a woman who knows how to rock a ribbon skirt, doesn't she? Matter of fact, that whole crowd does. If they got together.
Yes. So I was trying to put a link to the boarding school hearings. Not having much luck with that right at the moment.
Well, people can Google that up pretty effectively.
And then I also want to mention that Jill Condell, whose book The Clean Daughter just came out on Sunday, I think it's at 4 o'clock Central Time, through the North Dakota Humanities. She is featured as One Book, One North Dakota author. So she'll be on at 4 o'clock tomorrow. It's free.
That program sponsored by the Humanities North Dakota?
Correct. It's free, and if you just hook up with the Humanities North Dakota website, you can register. You do have to register in order to go, but it doesn't cost anything.
And they're looking for One Book North Dakota.
One Book North Dakota, featuring Jill Condell on it's Sunday. Did I say tomorrow? It's Sunday at 4.
We're a little confused tonight, aren't we?
Oh my gosh, yeah. There's something else going on tomorrow, so might be on my mind.
Well, and it's all, we're on academic calendar, agricultural calendar, Lutheran calendar, and a whole variety of calendar. I'm on bird watching calendar this week. I'm driving Dr. K crazy. Oh, look there, orchard orioles. Oh, rose-breasted grosbeaks. And they've kind of been distracting me all week. But for a little while, we're going to concentrate on some graduates. In particular, several people attaining graduate degrees have been working with me. Stephanie Allner, master's. Jake Morris, his MA. They both MAs. Stephanie writing a thesis on Great Plains women finding their own way. Deciding for themselves what kind of life they're going to live. For instance, got a Sander chapter in there on the Sandoz sisters of Nebraska. Not just Mari, but Flora and Caroline. Each one of them, just not living the life that they might have had prescribed for them. In any one of them. And Aaron Barth. Who has successfully defended his dissertation, so he's walking for his PhD tomorrow.
And his mama is watching the program right now.
Is she tonight? Well, tell her I need her help tomorrow.
Oh?
Yeah, since we haven't been hooding PhDs, there's still COVID, we're still doing the COVID dance a little bit. Nobody gets a handshake when they go across the platform this spring. No handshakes. And no hooding of doctorates. There's that ritual. You got a person's advisor and a graduate dean. They're on either side. A lot of that stuff that just hasn't been going on, and it won't be tomorrow. So Aaron's going to have to stand here, probably right about here, and we'll drape the hood on him. And how about Mrs. Barth? Ask her if she's willing to take the other side of the hood when we do that. All right. think that'd be appropriate. Well, anyway, that's the stuff's going on. And of course, I've been over to Father Bill Sherman's funeral this week. You know, too many funerals lately. But actually, it's just losing too many friends. The funerals were all right. The funerals are kind of edifying in each case and something of a comfort. You hate to bid well to those friends. Well, we're not going to dwell upon hard facts here tonight. I've got a ballad problem here, and maybe you can help me out with it. Who the heck wrote this thing? Because I believe I've got 45, 50 versions of Little Old Sod Shanty on the claim, and it gets more complicated all the time. You know, a few weeks ago, I came in excited after just absolutely driving Dr. K crazy with the discovery that, oh, there was an earlier version. You know, I pegged it about 1883, but this guy Frank Jerome wrote Little Old Sod Dugout on the claim in 1880, and oh, that's the progenitor of the song. And so we moved it back 3 years, and we got a definite author. Except everywhere you go, several people in North Dakota, several in Kansas, people in other states of the Great Plains, they all claim that they wrote Little Old Sod Shanty on the claim. Right here, I'm looking at an article I've clipped from the Nonpartisan Leader. That's the newspaper of the Nonpartisan League, the farmers' movement in the early 20th century here. December 30th of 1916. Dear editor, Nonpartisan Leader, I send you herewith the Little Low Sod Shanty on the claim. A little variation in wording. Little Low Sod Shanty on the claim. This poem was quite a favorite in Dakota Territory and adjacent country 30 years ago and later. I'm saying this because I claim authorship and copyright to this song and its title, other claims and versions of it to the contrary notwithstanding. Uh-oh. Then he goes on to describe a little bit of how he contends the song came to be, but he says he can trace it back from the first line sent from Iowa to Honorable J.J. Neerling in Jamestown, North Dakota in 1880, entitled My Little Low Sod Shanty on the Jim, that's the James River, the Jim River, to the last line of the enclosed version. Very sincerely yours, K.F. Ebner, Can-Do, North Dakota. Now, below that is the text of the ballad, My Little Low Sod Shanty on the Claim, a reminiscence of 1887 by K.F. Ebner, Can-Do, North Dakota. He goes on to say, can be sung to the air, meaning to the tune, of My Little German Home Across the Sea. Now, that's a song that dates from 1880s and circulated in sheet music and somewhat in oral tradition, sung at school programs and that sort of thing in this part of the country. Or My Little Low Log Cabin on the Lane, by which he has to mean Will Hayes' My Little Old Log Cabin in the Lane, 1871, or the erstwhile tune of The Lily of the Valley. Well, okay, that's a gospel song, The Lily of the Valley, but Little Old Log Cabin in the Lane is 1871, Lily of the Valley is 1881. So really all these songs get their tune. They lift it from Little Old Log Cabin on the Lane by Will Hayes. And then the most direct descendant is Little Old Sod Shanty on the Claim, except now this guy's just muddy in the water, something terrific. Okay, I've got a definite author and date in early 1880 in western Kansas. This guy did not write the song originally. Now, it might have gotten here by a little later in 1880, but its origin was in western Kansas. Why does he say, I think the song is a classic? He says, I claim authorship and copyright to this song and its title. He's writing this in 1916. But he seems to indicate that he says he wrote it in 1887, but he also says somebody else brought an earlier version in. All right. There's some lessons to get from this. During the great efflorescence of folk song in the Great Plains, which runs from the 1870s to the 19-teens, let's say, settlement generation and just after, intellectual property as a concept was just kind of a foreign thing. These songs were unbranded. They were free-range ballads. People like the Hull family picked them up and adapted them, and then kind of had their own versions. But this fella adapted it and made his own version, and he claimed it. He actually wants to say he wants to copyright it. Now, I'll sing it here in a moment. You see, it's just too similar to the version circulating in the 1880s and other parts of the prairies that other people, in documented fashion, I can say, wrote. What's he saying? Well, he doesn't have a clear conception of what it might take to assert copyright, but he believes that he has made enough imprint on the song that it's now his. And this goes on all over the plains with all manner of ballads. People take them, they rework them, and they say, now it's mine, it's my song. So when you find that, you got to take it with a grain of salt. And so often with the internal evidence, you can see, yeah, wait a minute, this is not an original text of this song. This is evolved from something else. But that's getting a bit into the weeds. This fellow Ebner, though, he illustrates something else. The people who messed around with folk songs like this, they are not some kind of primitive folk sitting around on a rough porch. Generally speaking, they were literate people. They were folk artists. This fella here, K.F. Ebner, he experimented with agricultural methods of gopher control and grasshopper control, and he writes it up and sends it into the newspapers. And he does biological field work for the U.S. Biological Survey, working on the disappearance of ground squirrels, that is what up north you call gophers, in the 19-teens. So he's a correspondent of scientists. He writes, he attended the Agricultural College in Fargo, NDAC, forerunner of NDSU, literate guy. These are the kind of people who delivered folk songs on the Great Plains. They were not illiterates. They were highly literate. They could read and write. Sometimes they're a little non-standard in their spelling and that sort of stuff. This guy, Ebner, represents that. But it's his claim of ownership that really grabs me. It's my song, you know? And I'm claiming it. Interesting thing. This guy might have made an interesting guy to make the land run into Oklahoma, right? He'd plant his flag and he'd claim his parcel of land, but he's claiming this song. I'm coming around to singing it now. My Little Low Sod Shanty on the Plain, as submitted by K.F. Ebner, Can-Do, North Dakota. Yeah, I'm stretching it out here. I got an awkward manuscript. In Can-Do, North Dakota, 1916. Now, in addition, where'd that guitar pick go? There it is. You'll notice that he has made some substantial changes. I'll say a word about that. But quite a bit of it's familiar. Now I'm looking rather seedy now while I'm holding down my claim. And everything is scattered round about. And the mice play shyly round me while I nestle down to sleep in my little old sod shanty on the claim. My clothes are splattered all with dough and really quite a fright. And everything is scattered much the same. And I fear if P.C. Barnum would get his eyes on me, he would capture me in my little cabin home. All the hinges are leather and the windows have no glass. The board roof lets the howling blizzard in. And one fears the hungry coyotes that are sneaking through the grass around the little low sod shanty on the claim. Now, so far so good. It's pretty familiar. When I left my eastern home, a bachelor so gay, to try to win my way to wealth and fame, I little thought that I'd come home burning twisted hay in a little rusty, in a rusty two-lid buffer on a claim. I can't even say that. Still I wonder if some kind-hearted maiden won't take pity on me and extricate me from the mess I'm in. Oh, the angel, how I'd bless her if this her home she'd make in my little low sod shanty on the claim, where the summers have fair weather and the winters quickly pass, where the seasons are of joy and endless change, when one scents the fragrant posies that are nestled in the grass round the little low sod shanty on the claim. Now, I get the fresh impression in that second chorus, he's overcompensating a little bit. The song's moved to North Dakota, and he's given us a bit of a snow job on the climate. Then when others would be happy for our dwelling on the claim, and would rise and shine and call us blessed, though they'd weep and mourn our parting, they would lay us down to rest near the little low sod shanty on the claim. But no, that sounds too faithless, we'd never, never die, but work and wait and watch and pray, till the summons of our Savior of earth's ransom in the sky, in the inmates of the sod shack on the claim, to be translated in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, at the sound of Gabriel's trumpet, we join the glad reclaim, the elements dissolving, and heaven and earth made new, in the little low sod shanty on the claim. Now, what the heck is going on there in the end? This is just darn hard to sing. It sounds like he's been reading the book of Revelation, and he's just got to get that in there. The fellow's just too darned evangelical, and he can't resist taking over that third stanza and making it about, well, the blissful afterlife, but also the rapture and the being taken up into heaven in the twinkling of an eye, along with his little low sod shanty on the claim. Well, I don't know. That's pretty idiosyncratic, you have to admit there. Yeah. Ownership. Whose song is it? Well, do we have any interesting guests on the chat line this week? I think you've got some family checking in, haven't you?
Family?
Well, Beth, I believe your sister's in there tonight.
You do?
She was a little while ago. Maybe you came in and she left, huh?
I didn't see her. Well, it's kind of acting up on my end here, so I can't shoot out any messages. I can't get out of the message that I wrote, so I'm trying to do it on my phone. So if my sister's there, hello, I love you.
Yeah, Anita's there.
Oh, my sister, that's my niece.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Anita is there. Anita and Mike.
That's right. I misrecollected. I just saw it a moment before we started.
And Nancy Kelly says when we come to Kansas, she's going to treat us to some pie.
Yes? What
or
kind?
Cake or both.
We'll take that. The calendar is kind of taking over around here. Maybe it's spring fever. And also this commencement thing here. It brought to mind a song that it looks like by my notes, I wrote in 1995. I think I remember what was going on. I think this is the time when, well, it was like now. We're having a transition here at North Dakota State University with the departure of our president, Dean Bruciani. And miss him well, or wish him well in the next stage of life. Keep talking to him, Dean. It's going to be good, you know. And President Cook coming on. He's joining us, Nancy. He's joining us from the University of Kansas. So give us a lowdown on him here. Maybe better private message that stuff though. And there's that transition. Yesterday, we bade farewell, although he's not leaving like today, but official farewell to Dr. Mark Harvey, our department head in history here at NDSU. But we're just carrying on with Willow Creek Folk School number 101, and I'm not sure how long we're going to go on here. Probably we'll just be the last ones left standing around here. But Jim Osmond, as I recall, was departing as president in 1995, and I got to thinking about him and Sonia. And, Sonia was a Minnesota girl, and Jim was a Western North Dakota boy. And that led to this song, but it was also grounded in circumstances of young men and young women. Where do people often find their marriage partners? They go to, well, if it's not far, go to some similar place where there's a university that brings people together from the far corners, and they mingle and mate, and matches happen, and we wish them well as they go ahead. And I wrote a song about that, in imagining, and it was not entirely imagined, you see, about a girl from somewhere to the east who ended up matched up with a fellow from Slope County, North Dakota, which is, down south of Medora for those who need a little help. It's in the southwest corner pocket of North Dakota. You can imagine it's fairly rough country if you're not familiar with it, and you'd be right. And the song was a little bit fanciful and a little bit romantic. But what happened, I started singing this around, and on 3 different occasions, middle-aged women came up to me and they said, "Did you write that song about my daughter?" And I realized, I didn't get too far from truth with this. This is a song called Home to Slope County, and it's for this time of year. I courted you in the Red River Valley. You remember the promises said. Now the snows are gone and the leaves coming on. You fear that it's time that we wed. No promise can ever deliver. A lover who longs to be free. So consider a while, sit with me and I'll tell you just how it will be. I'll take you home to Slope County in the spring, when the coolies sing with the melting snow. You can hear the prairie start to grow. I'll take you home to Slope County in the spring. Can you live far away from the city, where you miss the bright lights and your friends? Do you think that you're live if you are my wife? Go away in the West Dakota wind. You'll have a home on the Little Missouri. You'll have neighbors, though distant and true. You'll have a lamb's bottle fed and sunsets of red, and you'll have my love for you. I'll take you home to Slope County in the spring, where the purple views define the sky, and 100 golden eagles fly. I'll take you home to Slope County in the spring. In Slope County, the cabin will be finished. We'll ride through the hills side by side. There's a saddle well-tooled and a mare that is schooled to carry my Red River bride. Now don't you see those turtle doves flying in that choke cherry tree? Hear the fluttering wing and the song that they sing, just for my love and me. I'll take you home to Slope County in the spring, when the wild plum blossom scents the air like bridal flowers in your hair. dear, I'll take you home to Slope County in the spring. God willing, spring will stick this week, finally. Eh?
I hope so.
Speaking of matters of the season, got one more song to share with you. How did this come about? Well, it's for our Norwegian friends because Syttende Mai is coming up, 17th of May, great national holiday of the Norwegians. It's their Constitution Day. You know, Norway as a nation came about, as an outsider looking in, by an odd process. Yeah, there was some pushy stuff, shovey stuff. There was disorder in the streets. There really wasn't a Norwegian revolution to throw off rule by the tyrannous Swedes. There was some disgruntlement and only the mildest low voltage violence associated. They fought their revolution with poems. They invented a language that they could call their own and say, we're not like the Danes, we're not like the Swedes. We've got our own language. We're a people. And then they got their poets to work, like Henrik Wergeland, of whom there's a fine statue by a celebrated sculptor in Island Park in Fargo. And Bjornstjerne Bjornson, who's the author of the poem that became the national anthem of Norway, a great poet of the people, particularly the country people of Norway. Ivar Aasen was the great linguist that sort of established a Norwegian language. And how about Grieg, the composer, and Ole Bull, the fiddler? These people, as artists, poets, crafters of language, created a Norwegian people, as I observe this. It's an interesting proposition. Can you make a people out of words? I'm not very good at singing in Norwegian, and I don't have my great friend John Helgeland around to coach me, and I'm not going to attempt to here, but we are going to do something for Syttende Mai in honor of these people. There is a Norwegian ballad tradition. I'm looking for a book here. I got it. It's a book compiled by Theodor Blegen, the great historian of Norwegians from Minnesota, but for the whole part of the country, and a co-author, Martin Ruud, Norwegian Immigrant Songs and Ballads. Most Norwegian folk songs, people know, they're either, comic or romantic, many sort of triumphal, nationalistic. But there's a substantial number that deal with the trauma. And this is a great theme on the Great Plains, of immigrants coming from far parts of the world and landing in this strange landscape, surrounded by people who spoke strange tongues, and their disaffection, their sorrow, and how tough it was for a first generation. What we don't necessarily think about is how tough it was for those left behind. Whatever the point of origin was, those who sent their young people to America probably never to see them again. And those young people then would write home America letters. Amerika Brief in German, Amerika Brev in Swedish or in Norwegian. The Amerika Brev, the America letter, is a regular folk genre of literature. People writing home, I made it, I'm established in such and such a place, sometimes trying to get their sweethearts to come over and that sort of thing. Blegen, of this book, collected many of these America letters. He went to Norway and began to gather them together, and also songs about basically the sorrow of sending your family members off to America. The America Letter. Few are the homes in Norway that have not anxiously awaited the first America Letter. The noted Norwegian painter Tiedemann understood something of the emotions that stirred the hearts of parents when they heard from a beloved son. And in one of his paintings, he's portrayed such a moment in the lives of a peasant and his wife. And he describes that a little bit. But the story did not end with the arrival of that first letter. The incident dramatized by the artist and the poet needs to be completed by the historian. The historian would have that first letter, but he would also read those that followed, for only thus can he tell the whole story of the emigrant's venture. The compiler collected hundreds of old America letters in Norway, and he recounts those in his book called Norwegian Migration to America, published in 1931. And here's the ballad. Brevet fra America, the America Letter. Here's a Norwegian text. Again, without Professor Helgeland's coaching, I'm not going to attempt. Where's Lori Lala when we need her, right?
Well, she's watching.
But Blagan gives us a pretty good translation. But like many who translate, he doesn't attempt to make it into singable stanzas. I suspect Blagan himself was not a singer. And so that was left to me. He doesn't give us a tune. Some of the ballads he captured, he gives us a tune. Gives it an actual score, but not in this case. I'm not sure he had one, and that left me, hey, what am I going to do with this? I need a Norwegian tune. Okay, Lori and some of you may recognize this tune. Okay, I'll just tell you. It's stolen from Grieg. Solveig song from Peer Gynt. But Grieg, the great Norwegian composer, was kind of like Dvorak and others. They lifted from folk tradition and lifted the style from the folk tradition. So I've basically taken a melody from Grieg and I'm coining a term now. I refolked it and used it for the ballad that was collected by Blagan. So it's a thoroughly Norwegian melody. I don't claim that it's the one that it was sung to, but it works. And I think it captures the tone, the right tone for the poem. Give me a moment to compose myself on this. Okay. Letter has come from America, from son who has gone away. His hopes were so high that he could not be restrained, and his parents could only pray. The farmer addressed in the letter could not read. He had never attended a school. His hands, they were hardened and hurting for the land. It was hard and the sea was cruel. They send for a young fellow living on the coast who can read what the sun has said. They pour him a drink and they listen closely as the America letter is read, while the old man attends to every single word. His wife sits still and spins, her wheel going round like the notions in her head. In her heart a prayer begins. Thanks be to God for the passage o'er the sea. He is safe on America's strand. My worst fears now past, God preserve our boy still as a stranger in a strange land. But the father he broods, for there are no written words that will ever his fears allay. And a bitterness wells for the promises and lies that have taken his son